Issue 31. We start out with Sally using Nicole's magic wand to download a file of Eggman's. How is she able to access his information? Who knows? I like how Nicole expresses concern when Sally decides to jump onto one of Eggman's trains with her. It's cool that Sally's getting involved in the action here instead of Sonic for once. It looks like while Sally is the cautious one, Nicole is the most cautious of all. I find it pretty annoying that when she called Nicole a person, she put people in sarcastic quotation marks. But she hasn't known her for long enough to know better. Nicole says that Rotor is tracking her signal, and he says that Robotnik must be shipping his invention ahead of schedule, whatever it is. Not a very indicative name there. Good thing Rotor immediately tells us that it's Eggman's latest super robot, charged with maintaining his control over the western part of the continent. He then mentions that their agents in Robotropolis have been compiling information on it for some time. Agents? I guess those would be the people who disguise themselves as SWAT bots and make graffiti messages to work as spies in Robotropolis. Sonic runs off to find Sally and the other freedom fighters get on a plane to do the same thing, and after finding what I assume is a super robot and figuring out that Nicole's sensors are somehow being interfered with, which I don't think is ever explained, Sally gets herself in trouble. Sonic finds a train, and after he gets knocked out, it's revealed that it was Jeffrey who had found Sally there. It sure is a coincidence that he showed up at the exact same place to do the exact same thing. I'm guessing the reason he muffled her was to make sure she wouldn't scream for being startled by him and alert everyone to both their presence. But I don't think... I'm pretty sure they're the only people on that plane aside from the super robot, though. I like that after Jeffrey kisses her, Sally stays serious and focused on the mission, telling him that she's got a job to do before being irrationally paranoid at Jeffrey once again. I see you haven't changed either. I like how they have Jeffrey actually lampshade how paranoid she's being of him, especially since you'd think she'd had stopped being all suspicious of him a long time ago. Obviously, Jeffrey reveals that he's there to stop Eggman, and Sonic somehow figures out he had been hit by a SWAT-bot's laser and that's what knocked him out earlier. His friends catch up to him on a plane, and he grabs their rope so that he can jump onto the train, with Antoine warning him that he could get killed in the process. Well, at least he cares. Sally asks Jeffrey where his troops are, and he explains that they're about to stop the engine, only for it to be revealed that them doing that activated the robot as a failsafe. For once, Nicole's response to a question from Sally actually makes sense of her to know, as she suggests fleeing from the robot when that's not a realistic goal at the moment. So it humanizes her, making her make a mistake, rather than having her magically know the perfect solution every time. Awesome! Tails gets to help out! He grabs Sonic while flying in the air so that he can land on the train a lot more safely. Although Sally was able to jump onto a train from above and didn't get injured like she logically should have. So I guess that was kind of pointless. Then Sonic gets attacked by the robot in the train where Sally and Jeffrey are. And how the hell does Jeffrey not know who Sonic is? He's talking to Sonic isn't famous for being a very competent hero by this point. You know, running at the speed of sound, creating tornadoes effortlessly. Sally really hasn't mentioned Sonic once the entire time she spent around Jeffrey. I like that Sonic gets offended by it too, as it makes perfect sense. The super robot changes form, and after Sonic and Jeffrey argue, this I actually like, as opposed to Jeffrey and the pig. Jeffrey says that his troops need more time to work, and Sally warns them that if they wait for too long, the robot might destroy the train with them along with it. Nicole tells her that it's best to take the right action instead of acting hastily, and she explains that after going through the files she magically downloaded from a distance a while ago, she's finally learned what the weaknesses of the super robot might be. She explains that it cannot anticipate actions in advance, saying that it only shapeshifted as a reaction to an attack from multiple opponents, and then tells them that it can be deactivated with an electronic pulse scrambler plugged into a CPU. As a result, she explains that they have to exploit the first weakness in order to take advantage of the second. This is pretty creative. Surprise, surprise, Sally gets kidnapped and uses the damsel in distress. Sonic gets himself zapped after trying to attack the robot, and Jeffrey shoots it with a ray gun, sending out a tiny net while calling himself a grown-up for some weird reason, even though he's just as tall as Sally. So logically he should be the same general age and therefore a pup just like Sonic. So, if he's not the same age as Sally, or close to that, then they should have told us that. I don't get the impression that he's an adult. We're basically being expected to believe he's the more mature one to Sonic, when Sally said he reminded her of Sonic in the Sally miniseries. Alright then. Well, I don't know enough about him to judge that as false. After his device fails, Jeffrey complains that the bullets didn't pack enough juice, whatever that means, and he needs something with a stronger charge. Sonic gets to the roof of the train and explains that in his knapsack is something that Rotor anticipated he'd need, the exact thing that will scramble the robot's electronics. Considering Nicole said earlier that her information on its second weakness is something Rotor was already suspecting to be the case because of the agents, it makes perfect sense that Rotor would already know to put this in the sack ahead of time, so it doesn't come off as a Deus Ex Machina. Sonic distracts the robot, causing it to drop Sally and causing Jeffrey to catch her like he was told to. I like how after he flirts with her, Sally doesn't look too impressed. Always the serious one. I like that dynamic between them. Why is Sonic so suspicious of Jeffrey? I guess it could be at least explained by bias towards him since he's jealous of him as a rival for Sally. But again, he's a Mobian. Why wouldn't he be against Eggman? Then we see the modifications Rotor had made to his plane being used as a Chekhov's gun, letting the plane draw attention away from Sonic. With that, Sonic electrocutes the robot's CPU, and Jeffrey's troops make themselves useful by blasting the robot with lasers. I like how Jeffrey is smart enough to suggest making use of the train's equipment and supplies rather than just wanting to leave it there or destroy it. He then kisses Sally, and Antoine once again looks like a rich asshole by saying Sally has terrible taste in men just because she doesn't only like rich people. What, does he think rich people are inherently better than everyone else? And what's worse is that unlike last time when Antoine kept this thought to himself, here he calls someone a commoner right in front of Tails, and Tails doesn't call him out on it. And nor does anyone else who's in earshot for that matter. And the story ends with Sonic thinking that Sally's just trying to make him jealous, and deciding the two can play at that game. I'm really interested to see what will come of that, if only because I'm dying to see him with a love interest other than Sally for once. I know that romance isn't really the point of Sonic, but honestly I'm so used to shipping and all sorts of the media that I've seen as a kid and growing up. Like, I'm so used to seeing shipping and stuff like iCarly and Friends and The Big Bang Theory. And granted, those aren't like Sonic at all, but I'm just so used to seeing shipping that shipping and Sonic is not going to make me go ruined forever. Nah, I can deal with it. At least it's kind of interesting to me. I fail to see the point of the text at the bottom of the panel here though, because it's pretending the fans have a choice in who Sally should end up with, when the first comic special already told us that she ends up with Sonic. So, again, it's kind of pointless shipping her with anyone else at this point. But again, let's see what she'd be like with other people than just Sonic, so I'm all for it. In the next story, we see Knuckles wondering where the Chaotix are, and Archimedes watches Knuckles through a security camera. Why the hell was he able to respond to Knuckles' thoughts? I guess he's a psychic who can read minds. Although stranger things have happened in the Sonic universe, so why not? That's about all there is to say about it because it's such a short story. Again, the story should have been a part of the story it was actually leading up to. It's pointless on its own. It can't be enjoyed on its own. The next story has Rotor complain that he thought he heard something from an old radio, but it hasn't worked in years. It was his first piece of electronic equipment, so he kept it for sentimental reasons because it was a gift. Then his mother calls him up on it begging for help. I don't think it's ever explained how she was able to call him up on it if it hasn't worked for years, by the way. And Sonic says that she normally lived in the frozen northern sea. Rotor goes to the lab and figures out that the call is coming from way up north, one of the last pristine wilderness areas on Mobius. Why hasn't Eggman polluted that place yet? Also, I'd like to point out that they go there, or like, Rotor goes there, and he doesn't find any wilderness, he just finds ice flows, so you shouldn't have called that a pristine wilderness area. Sally gives Rotor permission to go and answer the call. I like how Sonic was nice enough to offer to help him out, but it's really annoying that Rotor arbitrarily refused to let anyone go with him, considering that Sonic would make a vital bodyguard for him. And Sally just lets him go without him, despite the fact that she's supposed to be the cautious one. This looks like a very bad idea. I hope Sonic goes with him anyways. Sadly, he doesn't. Rotor uses the same submarine he had used to save Sonic from an underwater trap very early on to go through an intricate underwater maze, until he finally reached the frozen North Sea. But if he just got out of the water with the submarine anyways, then why the hell didn't he just go around the maze and ignore it completely? Going through an underwater maze would make sense if his destination was purely underwater, but it isn't. Hell, he could have... Well, I guess if he used a plane to get there, he would have been spotted from above. He anchors the submarine and swims over to his mother and little brother, only to discover that they've been brainwashed by Eggman, and that he was lured over to the place by Eggman in a trap. So, what, did Eggman force his mother to make a distress signal before she'd be brainwashed? Or is Eggman really good at imitating Rotor's mother's voice? An entire crowd of walruses have been brainwashed by Eggman, and Rotor smartly decides to play along and pretend he's one of them. Wait, what? So apparently they're not working for Eggman because Eggman roboticized their brains, or even put a cyborg implant in their brains, but because he detonated a neuron bomb over their colony, and that short-circuited the brains. What? How does that make any sense? They're not cyborgs, so what's a short circuit? This is actually worse than going with the more expected explanation. Granted, this is something different, but it's stupid. Eggman explains that because he doesn't have enough money to melt the polar ice caps to create a water world, even though he as ruler of the world should logically have all the money and resources for it. This is a joke that doesn't work in universe. He wants to make them make a giant freezer unit to create a new ice age that will destroy all non-robotic life on Mobius. So basically a rehash of his use a weather machine to make the entire world cold plan, but without the using infrared technology to find living beings thing. Rotor is found out because he didn't talk like everyone else in the crowd did, and he gets clubbed in the head and knocked into the ocean, which somehow doesn't cause him to drown to death and falling in the water unconscious. Well, I say that even though the story doesn't show you that he makes it out, but come on, he's gonna make it out. And the story just ends after that. I love how Rotor gets to have a story to himself for once. This whole plot is pretty intriguing. I just hate the bullshit convoluted explanation for why these guys are all under Eggman's control. I'll just summarize my thoughts on the main story because that's the story that has the most to talk about, being the longest. I like it well enough. I loved how Jeffrey got to be useful in the plot again, and I really liked how Sonic and him were arguing and bickering, since it makes perfect sense that they get into a competitive rivalry from being competitors as love interest for Sally. I think it makes Sonic more relatable as a character to be like this. Unlike with the pig, where he hated Jeffrey over one little mistake, Sonic is competing with him because he likes Sally. So it's kind of sympathetic of him and relatable. I don't think the game Sonic would ever be portrayed as this, because the game Sonic has to be perfect. I also liked how creative the weaknesses of the super robot were. It was really well thought out. The only big problems I have are that Nicole was able to download files from Eggman somehow, without even the crux of the entire resolution of the plot, and Jeffrey somehow didn't recognize Sonic the Hedgehog, who you'd think would be the most famous freedom fighter in all of existence.